always be open, or either?
I'm easy.
You're easy?
I'm easy.
I like the lid closed, but I can see arguments in both directions. I think the seat always has to be down.
I think, like, if you're at a busy place like the service station, which is quite odoriferous, if the lids were down, I think it would reduce the odour and it would be a more pleasant experience.
Yeah. I think there's a difference between the conversation of like, should seat be down or seat be up? Because if both parties are happy for lid to be up, then seat should be either up or down depending on who used it last, because whoever goes in there next has to do the thing. They're either putting it down or up. But if you both agree on lid down, then it should always be down.
As long as it's wiped and nobody's left any evidence of the previous ablution in the bowl, I'm a happy camper.
Yeah. I mean, I think that should be a priori, right?
Unfortunately, especially at these service stations and our podcast studio that we started out with in Guildford, it was like a Glastonbury festival outdoor urinal deal thing, poo thing, where the poos are piling up, and we literally had guests, and some were peeing on the bushes.
Ooh. Women, or can I tell you something? So your listeners won't know this, but I actually ran a nightclub for 15 years.
DJ Hookie, HOOKIE, IE, not EY.
No, not EG. And for years, I think about 8 years, we ran our party at a club called Club 77 in Sydney, and it was voted the world's worst nightclub bathrooms.
Oh man!
And they were speaking specifically about the gents bathroom, and we had 2 cubicles in the gents, and then there was a urinal section as well. And it just looked like absolute hell. Do you remember that scene from Train Spotting where he like has that trip and goes down into the, It was like that. Those were like the bathrooms that we had. And we would try and keep them clean, and then it worked the flush would work for the first couple of people that used it. And then it would start to overflow and all this sort of, it was just a nightmare.
It's hard to aim when you're on hallucinogenics.
Yeah, that's right.
I sympathise, I've been there. Right, let's go back to where you were born. Let's go back to where were you born?
Where was I born?
Yes.
South Africa.
South Africa?
Yeah.
How did your parents meet?
That's a good question. They met in Australia. So I'm Australian. My mother's Australian. My father is actually British, but he was born and raised in Bahrain in the Middle East. And he got a job after he went to school here in the UK, and then went to the University of Surrey, actually.
I used to live right by that.
Yes. And that's why I raised my eyebrows and pointed when I said that.
That's where the podcast studio was with the Glastonbury toilet, right by the University of Surrey.
And then he got a job working for a company that saw him moving all over the world for that job. And one of the places was Australia, and he met my mother there. And so they met there, got married, but then, again, because of his job, they'd moved to South Africa. So I don't have any South African relatives or anything, but I just happened to be born there.
Do you know how they met?
Not enough to accurately describe it, but I know that they met through mutual friends, and I think it was something to do with my mum dated someone, and that someone's sister my dad was dating before they'd both met, and they both broke up with their respective brother and sister, but was in the same social circles or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm probably mucking that up, but it's something along those lines.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's how I think they met, and then married, then had me, and so yeah, South Africa. 2 years I lived there, so I don't remember any of it. And then when I was 2, we moved to America.
What part?
Dallas, Texas.
Oh wow!
And I remember that.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Dallas, Texas.
Did you?
Yes, I did.
How many years?
6-ish, 6.5, I think, or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
God, you're truly international, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I'm sitting here with you in fucking Bristol, so I guess. Actually, a nice place. Yeah. Never been here before. But yeah, so I do remember Texas quite well because I guess formative years, and I was going to school there. I had an American accent and I had a Texan accent.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then when I moved to Australia, because my parents split up.
Yeah.
And my mum, being Australian, came back to Australia, took me with her, and my dad followed. But for the first few months, I was not understood by Australian kids.
Did you get bullied for being a Yank?
No, I didn't get bullied. I just was misunderstood or not understood at all. And so I guess I dropped the accent pretty quickly. You know, you're more adaptable when you're a kid, and I think you just lose accents really quickly.
I had to do the same. When I arrived in America, I spoke like fish, chips and peas, love, salt and vinegar.
Yeah.
And they were like, God damn, are you Australian?
Yeah. So we don't have that here, so you are shit out of luck. Yeah.
So that's why I talk like I do, because I had to change my way I spoke, because they couldn't understand me.
Yeah.
So I understand what you went through.
And what did that mean? Did that mean that you sort of adopted a more sort of received pronunciation and British accent? Or?
I think I speak much clearer now, my accent, because this is like I was on the phone in the stock market. They had to understand me.
Yeah.
So I just had to quickly adapt with a new way of speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, as a kid, I think I wasn't as conscious about it, but it was just happening via osmosis, I guess.
Yeah.
So there was that, and then there were a few different cultural differences as well. You know, like what do you mean by peanut butter and jelly? Because we call jam jelly and jelly jam. And
when you had your peanut butter and jelly, did you wash it down with Magic Mind?
I didn't, because it wasn't around yet.
Oh, it tastes so healthy. I am lit from taking this. I have this before my podcast. It gives me a real energy boost.
Yeah.
Have you heard of it?
I need an energy boost right now. Do you have an extra one on you?
I've not got an extra one on me, but do you want to sample that?
Yeah, sure, I'll sample it.
Oh, there you go.
I like it. Magic Mind.
And if you go in the description box, you can get a 48% discount. First subscription with the promo code Shaun A20, SHAUNA20. What do you think?
They say of things that taste a particular way that you can just tell it's doing good things to your system.
Yes.
Right? And I think that's what I can say about it.
It's got a very chlorophyll-y taste.
I just have to take a second to...
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, go for it. So the Kardashians are on the Magic Mind, and Joe Rogan has mentioned it.
Magic Mind. When you need your arms to grow back. Actually, can I tell you a story about that?
Yes, don't jump ahead in the chronology, though. We're on your childhood right now.
Stop thinking chronologically. Start thinking creatively. So
I can't, because it's jarring. My brain has
had
to
your
stick
magic
to the
mind.
chronology.
That's your creative juice. I was at I was in a hospital once. I wasn't living there, but I'd gone back to get a script for something.
Yeah.
And I was waiting for the doctor, and this nurse came up to me and she said, we've got these first year psychology students that are running tests, and they're just doing some assignments, and they're doing interviews with people, and you'd be perfect for this. Like, would you mind coming and speaking to one of the psych students? And I said, yeah, that's fine, whatever it was. I went in and I sat with this young guy. He was probably like 19 years old or something like that. And he's asking me all these questions, typical sort of Psych 101 kind of questions. And then he said, how are you dealing with this whole loss of your arms and legs thing? And I said, it's going to be pretty rough for the first 7 years. And he said, what do you mean for the first 7 years? And I said, well, until my arms and legs grow back. And he was like, really? He starts furiously writing, and he's like, and who told you that would happen? And I said, well, just you pull a tail off a lizard and it grows back after about 7 days. I figure I'm 365 times the size of a lizard. I'll be all right in about 7 years. He's like, fascinating. And all I can think, he didn't challenge me on it, right? Because he obviously didn't want to upset the apple cart psychologically with me. And so all I can think or hope at least is that he went back and did this whole presentation to his class about how he met a guy who thought his arms and legs were going to grow back. So magic mind. When only the best will do. Sorry, where were we?
You've come from Texas to Australia and you've modulated your...
Peanut butter and jelly, modulated. Yeah.
And how are you doing at school at this point?
You know what else? Australia, you know how it has this stigma about it that everything's trying to kill you there.
Yes.
Fucking true. It's absolutely true. And I'm arachnophobic. I hate spiders, and it's just been such a challenging place to live from that perspective, because we have these spiders in Australia that aren't particularly dangerous or that they wouldn't kill you, but they just freak the shit out of me, man. Like
sun spiders,
huntsman spiders, right?
Big ones.
These are the most common ones that you would get in your house in Sydney where I live. And they're the size of, they can be the size, see that circle there? It's like a side plate or something like that. Just on the wall, you wake up one Saturday morning, it's just in there. I don't like that. I do not like it.
Arizona has quite a lot of dangerous insects and spiders.
And you would get scorpions there.
A lot of scorpions.
Yeah.
The little transparent ones that were the dangerous ones.
Oh, really?
Yeah, not the big.
Are they deadly, those ones?
I think there are cases of infirm people or people who are allergic to the venom. There may be cases of people got seriously ill or died.
Okay.
I mean, even ants out there, there's venom in them that can mess people up, allergic reactions.
You don't know how good you got it here in Britain.
When I got here, I was like, it's so safe.
Yeah.
This country's so safe.
So safe.
We interview these gang leaders from LA and they get here and they say it's so safe for different reasons. Let's get back to it then.
Where were we?
As a kid then, you're adapting to school. How's your social life?
Fine. I mean, it was just pretty regular. I don't think there was anything out of the ordinary with me. I was a pretty average student at school. I liked playing music. That was as soon as I discovered music and started playing guitar. That was my that was the thing that I loved most in life. I really liked music. Everything else kind of didn't really interest me.
What music were you getting into?
Okay, so at the time that I started playing the guitar, I used to listen to a lot of Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Jimi Hendrix, The Doors. I liked that sort of 70s rock kind of music. And I also was listening to quite a bit of like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, that kind of grunge sub pop scene.
What's this about early 90s then?
Well, no, this would have been about mid 90s, I would say. But I'd say about mid 90s.
Did you say you had a brother as well?
No.
No siblings? No. Okay. So what did you aspire to do when you left school?
When I left school, well, that's a good question because I didn't really have aspirations per se. Mm-hmm. I think I went to university because I felt pressure not pressure, that's probably like the wrong way to put it, but that it would be expected that I would go to university.
What did you study?
Psychology.
Psychology.
Yeah. But I didn't get through it because I ended up getting a cough that took me out for a couple of years. But yeah, it was kind of expected that I was going to go to university, I guess. And I think if I were left up to my own devices, I probably would have taken a year off before studying and done a kind of gap year. But I think my dad convinced me. He's like, just look, you can get into this course now. Just do it, start it, whatever it is.
And did you have any serious relationships, girlfriend, when you were a teenager?
No. I mean, I had a couple of crap casual ones, but no, not really. I wasn't anything like that until probably a lot later in life, I guess. And then I had, that actually brings us up to when I got sick, the university thing. So
you go off to university. You were living at the university?
No, I wasn't. No, in Sydney, it's not a big thing in Australia, like living on campus.
I stayed at home too. I loved the laundry that my mum did and all the home cooking.
Yeah. Well, I actually boarded for the last 2 years of high school.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about this the other day, actually, but I actually really liked boarding in high school. was a little bit of a different situation at my school because it wasn't like the dormitory situation. Everybody had their own room. It was kind of like staying in a cheap motel or something like that. So you had your own little room and your own little ensuite, little balcony. But there was a lot of autonomy to it. So you do your own cooking and you do your own laundry and stuff like that from the age of 15 or 16 or 17. So I kind of liked it, and it gave me a sense of autonomy and independence that I wouldn't have got if I was living at home. And I was living out of home when I was at university as well. So, yeah, I think I really appreciated and valued autonomy and independence from a quite a young age. But I was just living in an apartment. It wasn't like a campus thing.
Was that exciting?
Living in an apartment?
As a young person?
No. It was, I'm just trying to remember it. It was a slog because you don't have that much money as a student, you know, and you...
Does the government pay for university in Australia?
Yeah, they do. Well, you know, they call it HEX, so they pay for it and you pay them back.
Okay.
So I didn't have to pay tuition fees at all. I just had to pay my rent. And
did you have any side jobs?
I worked. Yeah, I worked as a waiter in a restaurant and in a pub.
What was that like?
That was fun. I really liked that. I liked working in hospitality.
What did you like about it?
I think I liked being around people that were enjoying themselves. I think if I'm super critical about what I enjoyed about it, it wasn't just, it was people were choosing to be at this place to have fun. And even though I was working there, I got to be involved in that in some kind of a way.
Yeah.
And then as I was working in the restaurant, I started learning a lot about cooking because the chefs would teach me stuff about cooking. And they would also give me food from the kitchen, which is invaluable when you don't have money, right? Because I would spend all my money on like cigarettes and alcohol as a student after rent.
And were you partying?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I wouldn't say I was partying, actually. I'd probably drink a lot after work because any free time that I had that I wasn't at university, I was working in this pub.
Yeah.
And I used to do 5 shifts a week. I'd do Friday afternoon, Saturday day, Saturday evening, Sunday day, Sunday evening, and then Monday to Thursday I was at uni. So there was no days off.
So would you say you were quite disciplined from a young age?
No, not at all. I'm the least disciplined person. And I still am the least disciplined person. But if I had to sacrifice anything, it would be classes because they weren't paying me to get classes. I had a few days. Like, I mean, for instance, Monday and Tuesday mornings at 8 o'clock, I had calculus. The fuck that's going to happen? Come on. And I'm the worst at maths. I'm terrible. I really want to be good at it because I find it fascinating, but I'm just not good at it. And so the motivation to get up at 6:30 in the morning and do calculus in an auditorium full of people who know what they're doing is the most demotivating thing I can think of. Yeah, so that was the first thing on the chopping block to go.
You're triggering my university calculus PTSD right now.
Yeah.
Balance of payments.
You say that equations. Like it's a thing everyone experiences. University calculus PTSD.
Oh,
yeah.
Pages and pages of it.
I bet. Yeah. No, it was pretty awful. So
what was your social life at uni then? Did you have new mates there?
Yeah, I didn't really. I mean, I had my friends that were my friends that happened to go to the same university as me. They were always around. And then I also used to spend a bit of time with some people that I worked at the pub and the restaurant. And my social life revolved more around the place I worked than anywhere else by dint of the fact that I didn't have any money. So it's cheaper to hang back at work and have a few staff drinks where I didn't have to pay for it than go out to a place I couldn't afford to be or something like that. So, but I was only there for, that first year. And then that's when
What was the first indication that something was wrong with you?
The first indications I ignored. It was about 10 days after my 19th birthday. And I was feeling just a general malaise when that sense when you feel sick, but you don't know what's wrong. You can't really put your finger on anything. And I went to uni one day. This had been happening for about a couple of days, I'd say, just like a feeling like you're getting a flu almost. And then I went to university on the Wednesday, and I was at the cafe with a bunch of friends. And as soon as I got there, I had a coffee, and I was like, actually, I'm just going straight home, because it was starting to get worse and worse as I was sitting in this chair. And I took the bus home, and so it was a Wednesday, I guess, early afternoon, put myself to bed, and I texted my stepsister. So I have stepsisters. I texted my stepsister, who's my age, and she went to the same university, and I just told her what was going on, and I think I made a joke about it, and I said, like, if I don't wake up in the morning, like, nice knowing you or something. I don't know. I would have made a joke about dying. If only I'd know how close I actually came to dying that night. And she wrote back to me and offered, she's like, I'll take you to a doctor. And I was like, no, I don't need a doctor. Like, that's ridiculous overcorrection. And I said, I'll text you if I need you or something like that. And that night was pretty awful. I would wake up in like a cold sweat, would be really disoriented, dizzy. At one time I felt freezing, and I crawled to the bathroom. I had like a little sort of ensuite shower thing. I put myself in the shower and turned the hot water on full bore. And then I passed out in the shower and then woke up with the water raining down on me and like pools of blood. I'd like hit my head or something like that. Then I dragged myself back to bed, couldn't stand up. It was at that point that I started thinking, like, maybe it's not a cold, like maybe something else is wrong.
When you were dragging yourself back to bed,
yeah, actually it wasn't then. It was after then that I thought.
Were you thinking, mate, I should probably get my stepsister involved at this point?
Yeah, but that was sort of probably like 4 a.m. or something, so I wasn't going to bother her. I thought I'd wait and see how it was in the morning. And I think it was probably about 7 or 8 in the morning, and it would have been a bit later because she was already at university, and I texted her and I said, I think you better take me to a doctor because I can't stand up.
You couldn't stand up at all?
Couldn't stand up, yeah. And I was, I was living on my own, just in a 1-bedroom apartment. So it's not like I had a flatmate or someone to take me. So I had to text her. And
how scary was that when you first realised you couldn't stand up?
It wasn't really scary. It was just because you never think that it's something like what it was. You just think that you've got a really bad flu, you got hit really hard, and you're just going to have to put up with it for a bit. So it wasn't scary. It was just, I don't know, debilitating, And I just wanted it to be over and done with. So it's like, take me to a doctor. I'll get some kind of antibiotics or antivirals or whatever it is, and I'll just, wait it out. So she was at university at the time and texted me back and just said, I'll be there in 20 minutes, something like that. I said, okay. And it took me 20 minutes to get my shoes on because I couldn't, my feet had swollen up to like double the size. And I wasn't really paying attention to why I couldn't get my shoe on. I was just like, why isn't this going in? It didn't make any sense. So I couldn't get my shoes on. And then she came to the door and she was ringing the buzzer in apartments. So it comes through to your thing. And I had to get to the other bit to press the button to buzz her in. And it took me so long to get there because I was like crawling at one point and then trying to reach it. And then finally buzzed her in. She gets to the door. I open the door and her face just dropped. Like, it looked like she'd seen a ghost. And she said to me, later when she recounted that, she just said that I was fully white, but I had a purple rash impinging upon my skin everywhere. And she just said, I'm taking you to the hospital right now. And at the time, I think I was like, let's not, make any rash decisions. Like, just take me to a doctor. It'll be fine. And she's like, no. You don't see what I see. Like, we're going to a hospital. So she took me to this hospital just around the corner where I lived in Balmain in Sydney. This hospital was not that kind of hospital. They had an emergency department, but they can't really deal with stuff like that. And we went straight into the emergency, or A&E, you call it here, I guess. And Then the woman at the A&E just looked at me and did the same thing, like her jaw just dropped. And I remember thinking like I really want people to stop looking at me like that. And she was like, she said to this wardsman, she's like, get this guy a wheelchair, bring him in right now. Took me through to some room to the side. People started ripping my shirt off, sticking needles into me and all this shit. And then I had this moment where, I mean, they said to me, they said, we're going to transfer you to RPA, which is a bigger hospital. We have to take you there in an ambulance and we have to do it now. I was like, okay, fine. So they wheeled me on from the gurney onto in the back of an ambulance. And I remember seeing the doors close. My stepsister was on the other side, just being like, good luck. And like that could have been the end for me because I was very close to death at that point. But
it wasn't dawning on you.
No, I didn't know how serious it was. In fact, she had called my dad, who was in Adelaide at the time, and I spoke to him on the phone. And he's like, "Is everything okay?" And I said, "Yeah, it's fine. Like, I'll be all right. I'm just something's wrong, but I don't know what it is." And he said, "Oh, I'm going to come back early from Adelaide." And I'm like, "Don't be ridiculous. I mean, just finish your business trip, whatever it is. I'll be fine." Which, I mean, even if I was going to die, it wouldn't have mattered if he came back from Adelaide or not, because I would have been dead in the ambulance, right? There's not much you can do from Adelaide. Anyway, so my last memory was being in the back of the ambulance, and they had a paramedic that was just with me. So there's the guy driving, and then there's the guy that's making sure I don't die. And he was just really stern. Like, obviously he was really concerned for me, but all I was concerned about was making him laugh. And just because I wanted to crack him, right? Because he was just like, I was like, all right. And I was just failing, right? Because he was just really, really stoic. And I finally cracked him because he said something like, I asked him how long it was going to take to get to the hospital, and he said, 10 minutes. And I said, 10 minutes is what people tell you when they have no fucking idea how long it's going to take to get somewhere. Because if it's closer, you say 7 or you say 13 or you're more specific, but 10 minutes means you have no idea, right? And I got a little chuckle out of him, like a little smirk, and I was like, yes, got him. And then it was like, bang, darkness. And I was in a coma for like 2.5 weeks after that. Yeah.
So you wake up. Do you think like that was just a bad dream?
No. Coming out of a coma is just this really weird thing where you're kind of like oscillating between lucidity and dream, back and forth. It's very much not, well, in my experience at least, it wasn't like being like in a movie where you come out and I feel so much better. It was just this weird slow attack of like back to reality. And so, yeah, the whole thing kind of felt like a dream, not what happened before it, but lying in the hospital bed and becoming aware of your surroundings. And I had a big tube down my throat that was breathing for me because while I was in a coma, I'd been on life support. They performed this thing on me called a phasiotomy, which I wouldn't recommend anyone Google that now that I say it. But effectively what they do is when the body is swelling, they take a knife and they cut you down your arm to give the arm or the tissue somewhere to swell. So that had happened. I had, wires and central lines and tubes plugged into me everywhere. But I couldn't move any part of me. And I couldn't speak either because I had the tube down my throat. And then even when they remove the tube, it damages like the larynx, I think it is, right? So you can't speak. So for ages I was communicating via blinking, and people would go through the alphabet, and I'd just like blink on a letter, and like you've seen like what is it? It's not Better Call Saul, is it? From the guy from Breaking Bad.
The guy with the bell. Yeah.
Bing, bing, bing.
Yeah.
It was like that kind of.
Wow.
Yeah. Trying to spell out words and things like that. I was doing that for a while.
Yeah.
Shitload of good it did. But yeah, so I'd woken up, and so it's a pretty dire situation. And they weren't giving me a good survival rate. And so they had informed friends and family that this would likely be the end of it.
Wow.
And so I had a lot
Did you know that at that point?
I don't think I knew how dire it was. Someone told me I had a 2 to 10% chance of survival. But I could read between the lines, right? Because I had to have friends come in, and it's when the way they were talking to me when I was in a hospital bed was like it was the last time they were going to talk to me. So I can read between the lines. I know that's what they've been told. Can
you take me through the conversation of the 2% survival?
No, I can't. I don't remember having that conversation with someone, but I just remember it being said at some point, and it changed over time as well. So it started with that number, and then it sort of increased as things went on. Yeah.
But you do remember that being said?
Yeah.
And when that was said then, 98% chance you're going to die, basically. Were you just hazy out of it, or?
No, sorry. I was told that later on.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't told in the moment that it was the 2 to 10. The 2 to 10% thing was, I was told that much later in the game.
Okay.
When I had sort of surpassed the hump of survival.
All right, let's go through it. What's happening to you real time? Let's stick to the chronology. I know you hate chronology.
You're obsessed with chronology. What's happening to me at the time when I was in RPA? So RPA, I was there for about 5 weeks, I think. 5 or 6 weeks. 2 of those weeks I was in a coma. Woke up, and I remember there being a lot of debate about what to do with me because they'd saved my life using this drug called activated protein C. Now, apparently, and you're not going to like this because I'm going to jump forward to somebody telling me something from the future.
How dare
you? I was told by a doctor later in life who I met, and he was apparently the attending doctor when I arrived. And apparently I was conscious when I arrived at RPA, although I don't remember being. And he said, we have this drug that's on trial. We have to fly it over from New Zealand, but because it's in trial phase, you have to sign that we can use it. And I said to him, I don't care what you do, just fix me, right? Just keep me alive. And I signed away, permission to use this drug. And I think that drug was what saved my life, activated protein C. And so how to treat so what I contracted was meningococcal, right, which is a bacterial meningitis type thing. And it causes septicemia in my case, which is like a blood poisoning. So you're battling sepsis. So my feet had gone like as black as a leather boot. My hands were the same. I had black sort of gangrene. It's gangrene, right? All over my face, all over my back. Most of my body was affected. The only parts that remain unscathed were my chest, stomach, groin, and the inside of my thighs. Like all of that was fine. Everything else, the parts of my back, the outside of my legs, all of my arms, gangrene, and fingers and digits had gone black. And so they're like, well, what do we do? They just keep giving you this activated protein C, antibiotics, whatever it is, to try to, get some movement and blood flow back into extremities. And the more time they don't get that, the more there is the chance that they're going to have to amputate whatever's left because it's just dead tissue. And so they moved me eventually. I think there were a few hospitals that were vying for my case at the time. And I ended up being handed across to a hospital in Sydney called Concord, which is in an area called Concord. And it was specifically because they had a couple of surgeons, really good plastic surgeons, and they also had a burns unit. And they're apparently the best burns unit in the country. And they deal with what happened to my skin like they deal with burns. And so I was given to them, and like that.
Let's just go over some of this more slowly then.
Yeah.
So when
just
you
to get the chronology,
when you when you woke up then, and then you did you wake up to the black fingers and the black?
Yes.
When you saw that, what went through your head?
I didn't actually see it for quite a while because they covered me up, and I think they did that on purpose.
What about your fingers?
Yeah, fingers. So I was covered with blankets, and so a lot of it would, they didn't want to spread infection or for them to get infected or whatever it was, but they probably didn't want to panic me either.
But when you did finally see it, what went through your head?
Trying to think of the first time that I saw it. I think I might have seen. I think I saw my toes early on in RPA. And I remember thinking, they look pretty bad, pretty dead. But at the time, I think I had this hope that with enough drugs that they would sort of come back to life a bit. I just
because it's like you were minimizing it in the beginning, and now the moment of truth has arrived.
That's right. But they also had me pumped full of so many drugs. Like I was on just heaps of morphine and ridiculous amounts of things.
So that kept you.
Yeah,
grounded.
I think so. Yeah, definitely. Like I remember.
What was the first conversation that was broached about amputation? When did that come on?
I remember my parents telling me that I might lose a few digits.
And
toes, fingers, things like this.
What were you contemplating at that point?
At that point, I remember thinking, well, toes I'm fine with. Fingers is going to gut me because I loved playing guitar. That was everything to me. And so I was thinking can you live without fingers? Can you play guitar without what? That was a lot, I think. I had no concept that I might lose an entire arm or something like that. Yeah, it wasn't even on the cards.
And your parents' first visit, how did that feel? What?
I don't really remember it because, they would have been there from the beginning while I was in a coma. They were, but it's such a hazy time in my memory of coming. It's like slipping out of that coma and back into lucidity. That there's not one real specific time that I remember. I do remember coming to once and. Not being able to see anything, but I could hear things, and I could hear my mother's voice. But that's the first time I remember something like that.
Was that reassuring for you? Were you kind of wondering where the hell you were and what was going on?
No, that was more confusing because
hearing your mother's voice was more confusing.
Yeah, because it's out of context. Yeah, so I don't remember any specific conversations, but both of my parents were there by the time I woke up anyway. And so many incidents sort of meld into one during that time, just because it's such a hazy part of my memory.
Even though it's hazy, can you take us through those incidents?
Which ones?
All of them.
All of them?
Yeah, the incidents that you remember when you woke up.
I probably can't recall all of them off the bat, but I can give you a couple that I think. I remember wanting water at one point.
Yeah, because you've not drunk or ate for a couple of weeks.
Yes. So about 2.5 weeks, I hadn't had any water or anything to eat, and I've got water coming through a drip, but your mouth is dry and awful, but I couldn't speak, and so I was blinking, and I remember my dad having the letters. He's like, so A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then when you get to the letter, you got to blink, and I was trying to type out with my blinking water. And I think he got W, got A, and then he got to T, and then he got to E, and he's like, I don't know. He's like, whatever, what? And I'm just like, I was furious. I was like, how do you not get this? But I think I think he knew he couldn't give it to me. And so he was trying to make it seem like he couldn't get what I was talking about.
Why couldn't he give it to you?
I wasn't allowed water. for a while, like about a good week or two. Once they'd taken the tube out, the concern is that if they give you some water, it'll go into your chest and give you pneumonia or drown you potentially. And so you have to keep getting the liquids through the drip. And so the first time I actually had anything remotely close to water, I was given an ice cube by a nurse that was doing a night shift. And this is, about a week later, I could talk a bit at that point. I sort of convinced this guy to give me this one ice cube. And I remember that really viscerally because he gave it to me in those styrofoam cups that you have really shit coffee in? Like you go to like a lunchroom and it's just like instant coffee in that shit styrofoam cup. It was like that. And he has this one ice cube. He said, you can suck on this. And I remember like looking at it as it was coming down in the cup. It was one of the greatest things I've ever consumed in my entire life. Oh, this one ice cube.
How did it feel when it hit those receptors?
It was cold as well, and it went everywhere in my mouth and just completely, because it was so dry in there. It was like the Sahara Desert or something, and it was just perfect. And then I was just like, can I have another one, please? And he's like, okay. He saw that it didn't kill me, so he's like, all right, we'll do one more. But yeah, that was such an amazing experience for me. Look, it was awful not being able to drink water, but I always appreciate water every time I drink it now, like I never have before, and like I wouldn't if that hadn't happened.
Any other magical moments like that at that time?
Oh, magical moments. Well, I didn't have magic mind, so the magic moments were few and far between. Magic mind.
Link in the description.
Yeah, link in the description. No, not really. I mean, I do remember like having, the difficult conversations with people, like I was mentioning before about, them saying that I might lose a few digits or something like that. And the doctors really wanted me to move a finger or a toe because that was the first indication that they might be able to save a finger or a toe is if I could move it.
What happened when you tried to move it?
Well, I felt like I was moving it. And that was my first experience of what phantom limb sensation was. If you close your eyes now and you move your fingers, right, you know that your body has a map of, an internal blueprint of your mind has an internal blueprint of your body, and you can feel your fingers moving. I still have that sensation to this day.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So if I close my eyes, I can still feel my toes, still feel my fingers, and I can move them. And that's all I was doing at the time. My fingers were dead, but I was moving them, and I'd say to the doctor, I'm like, yeah, I'm moving them. Can't you see? And he's looking down at my hand. He's like, "You're not, not at all." So there were a lot of conversations like that happening. I remember friends coming in. I don't remember many specific conversations, but a few I have flashes of people telling me to just keep fighting, and I don't really know what that means at this point because I'm not fighting anything. It's the doctors fighting the disease in me, and I'm just the vessel at this point. I'm the battleground, not the participant necessarily. My grandparents came over from here. And I think that, my UK family were told pretty much that I wasn't going to make it. So if they wanted to fly over and say their goodbyes, then they had to do that quickly. And I do remember a specific conversation I had with my grandfather who, we were just, he was telling me that he was proud of me, blah, 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 typical conversation you might have with a grandparent. And I remember telling him that I would come over and visit him next because he had bad heart issues at the time and he wasn't really able to get on planes. I think he was on a no-fly list after that. And the weird thing about that interaction was me telling him that I said, as soon as I get out of here, I'm going to come and visit you. And he turned to me and he said, yeah, if like you do that kind of thing. But I could tell in his face that he didn't believe that was going to happen. And that was a weird indication to me because I'm like, what is everybody being told? Like, are they just, they're being told that that's it kind of thing? So that was a good motivator, make it my business to get back over to the UK as soon as I could. And I managed to, obviously. So, yeah.
So how did the conversations go from digits to
limbs?
Yes.
The conversations didn't as much. It then became a case of having those conversations with doctors. So I think in the early stages, my parents were there to kind of just sort of ease me into the idea of maybe losing things. And then I remember the conversation that I had with both doctors. The first doctor who told me that I had to lose my legs, I'd already been prepared by it, I think by one of my parents, who said, you know, there's a chance you might have to lose your legs. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, I was kind of all right with it because I was at that point, I was so close to death. And I was like, look, if it gets me out of here, fine. But the weirdest part was that I didn't really know that much about how people live with disability. I mean, I was a 19-year-old kid. I didn't know any disabled people. What happens when you lose your leg? Like, do you get prosthetics? Can you walk? Do you have a wheelchair? How does that work? Do you have one of those scooter things? I had no idea, right, what my life would be like. But I remember not being all too bothered about the leg thing. And then I remember the doctor coming in and saying, like sort of confirming, just said, yeah, well, the legs are going to have to go. I was like, all right, fine, let's do it. In my head, I was like, I'll do what I can just to save my arms. Like I'll live with no legs just if I can save my arms. And it was like a couple of weeks later that it was the same conversation pretty much with a different doctor actually. Actually, it wasn't the same conversation. The second guy was funnier because he said he gave me an ultimatum. Well, it wasn't it wasn't an ultimatum. It was just a sort of funny way of putting it. He came in, this doctor, he's a fantastic guy, very good doctor, and he's an Austrian dude. And he's usually flanked by a bunch of registrars and underlings, but at this time he came into my room on his own. And I remember he sat down and he said, you've got a couple of options. I said, okay. He's like, we can amputate your arms at the elbow. He said, you can live with prosthetics. It's been done before. It's rare, especially for a quad amputee, but it's doable. I said, all right, I don't really like that option. And he's like, or you can keep the arms. And I said, okay. I said, what's the catch? And he's like, well, you'll die. Which is, I get it, but also it's pretty funny. And so, but apart from he was, I think, just sort of tapping into my dark sense of humor, which he knew I had, but also at the same time giving me the option, because up until that point, things were just happening to me and I had no agency. And so he was giving me an option. If I didn't want to go on, they can't legally kill me, but I can deny surgery. And so if I thought I didn't want to go on without arms, I would just say, leave them and we'll see how we go, I think. But obviously I made the decision to go with the former.
How hard was that decision?
Easier than you'd think.
Because the will to live is the strongest.
Yeah. It wasn't not depressing, and I did have to think about it, but I don't think I was ever really considering not doing it. Once there was that dichotomy, like do it and live, don't do it and die, I think in my head I would have immediately made that decision if I was being honest, but I think I probably took a day or something. And the day was just to bask in the autonomy, right? Just to, for the first time in this whole process, have a choice about something.
I totally understand that, because when I was facing 200 years and I felt I was a vessel, my life was in the hands of a few people, the prosecutor, judge, etc. If I end it, I'm taking control. Yeah. And that gave me a sense of relief.
Yes.
So many a night I would go to bed contemplating ending it just to give myself that relief.
Yeah. Just to have some control over the situation, yeah.
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 You're a philosopher. I think Nietzsche said many a dark night he contemplated doing that. Yeah, and it gave him comfort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I discussed the idea of suicide thought about that earlier on. Well, not earlier than that, sorry. After that, just trying to think. Because after I'd lost both arms and both legs, I went through a period where I had like dressing changes on, like, so dressings all over my body of wounds. So I think 80% of my body was open wound, right? And
grief.
Yeah, it was quite high. In fact, it was a funny story. When I was in the burns unit, there was this whiteboard and it had the names of all of the patients on it. And I was at the top with like 80%. And I remember being wheeled out one day and I said to the nurse, I was like, oh, does that mean I'm getting out soon? She's like, no, that means you're the person with the highest open wound body at 80%. I was like, okay, cool. Way to kick a man when he's down, eh?
Before you proceed,
yeah.
Could you just tell us about...
This is chronological, by the way. This happened next
Let's
year.
go back. So you've made the decision now. You've agreed
to
have the full operation.
Yes. Well...
Going into that, what's your mental preparedness? Because this is serious.
I was having operations pretty regularly.
Okay.
So they weren't like I have skin graft operations, debriding operations. So operations was like a weekly thing.
Wow.
So you just get, you'd be nil by mouth the night before, wake up in the morning, wardsman take you down to a room, you sit there, the anaesthetist, with whom I was on a first name basis, friendship with at that point. In fact, I had this great moment with him. His name was Chris Yo. And he'd give you the anesthetic and you'd have to count down from 10. You get to like 6 or 7 and you'd be out, right? And I remember, I think it might have even been the arm amputation time. And I said to him, I'm like, I'm going to make it to 0 this time. And he's like, oh, okay, are you? So he's like, puts it in and I'm like 10, 9, 8, and I'm keeping my eyes open and look like fucking Clockwork Orange. and I got to like, I'm like 2, 1, and I was like 0. I'm like, I got it. And he's like, that's great. He's like, now count back up again. I was going, yeah, 1. So he like waited to put it in. Fucking prick.
So are you saying then each limb was a different operation?
No, both legs was one operation, both arms was one operation, but then there were other things that I had done. Like, I had problems with organs. They had to debride a lot of the gangrene.
Problems with organs?
Yeah, I had a kidney shut down, half my liver. Kidneys are shit half the time anyway, but this was, one of them just stopped working altogether. And then half the liver, but those, kidneys kick back in again, livers regenerate. So like, it's not that big a deal. And you can live with 1 or half a liver.
Was your heart affected?
No, not that I know of. Yeah. It was actually I had heart attacks, but I don't think it was affected long-term.
You had heart attacks during the hospitalization?
Yes. And heart attacks while on life support. Wow. Who knew you could do that?
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you come out of these 2 operations then, the big ones, how did you feel I mean, like
Lighter?
Could you could you still feel like you could close your eyes and move your leg, for example?
Yeah. I can still feel that now.
Yeah. But did you literally feel lighter? Or are you just joking?
Yeah, no, you do.
You actually do feel lighter.
So I am joking. But yes, you also do.
You do.
Yeah, because it's weird, right? Because if you're laying there and you can lift like a thigh and there's nothing at the end of it, that feels weird.
Yeah.
Like everyone listening that has legs, which I'm assuming is most of you, it's really hard to know what that feels like. It's just like, ugh.
And how did that affect your sleep and your appetite?
I wasn't sleeping that much in that hospital anyway, a couple of hours a night. And then I would sleep for a bit after I got out. I'd have these dressing changes that I was talking about before shit got all chronological. And that was so exhausting and physically painful that I would sometimes pass out after that for about an hour. So my sleep was erratic anyway. So sleep and what was the other thing you asked about? Appetite, yeah. Largely unaffected by things like that. It was, yeah.
So
hospital food, that's what affects your appetite.
Your relationship with pain, did that evolve?
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's so much evolved as I was introduced to a new world of what that really meant. And